See, it's very, very important. Pay attention. It's very, very important that before you go into marriage, you try as much as possible to find out the negative patterns running in your family. Negative patterns that you notice running in your family. Let me give you an example. There are families where people die young. There are families where people don't have children easily. There are families where people suffer certain diseases or sicknesses. There are families where people go through divorces. You might come to a family and you notice like about 2 or 3 or 4 people are divorced in the family. So you notice a cycle of divorce, a cycle of sickness, a cycle of untimely death, a cycle of tragic events, a cycle of poverty, a cycle of misfortune running in the family. Now, I want to say this. Before you get married, please deal with these things so you don't bring your family bondage into your new home. Please, if you're a married person and you are listening to me, I want you to think, what are those things you saw in your father's house and you didn't deal with them and you bring them into your own new home, into your marriage, and it's affecting your children, affecting your spouse? There's what we call transfer of spirit. If you don't deal with a situation, you will transfer it to your spouse by covenant, because marriage is a covenant, right? So the Bible said something. The Bible said, bear your yoke, your burden when you are still young. When you are still a single person, deal with these things. If you notice that in your family, that there is a cycle of some misfortune, cycle of death, untimely death, cycle of sickness, cycle of some tragic events, cycle of curses, because the Bible says that God will bring the sin of the fathers, the judgment will go to the 3rd generation, even to the 4th generation. So every blessing of God runs in a generation, and every curse runs in a generation. So it's very important that now you are planning to get married. If you're a single person, look into your family and check if there are negative patterns, if there are a pattern of sickness, certain sickness, mysterious sickness you can't even explain, a pattern of untimely death, a pattern of sickness, misfortune, a pattern of poverty, a pattern of barrenness, divorce, a pattern of some negative situations. Is wisdom for you to deal with it. Go and meet a man of God, call for prayers, break that situation, deal with it. Now you are still a single person. Right? There are families where people don't get married, easily. They have to fight and fight and fight before they get married. These things are curses. A curse is a negative pattern that keeps running in a generation, from generation to generation. And some of you listening to me, you notice a negative pattern running in your family. Your father suffered it, your grandfather suffered it, and now you're suffering it. You notice that people die young in your family. You notice there's a cycle of divorce and marital crisis in your family, in your generation. You notice that there is a sickness running in your generation. It killed probably your family member, and 1 or 2 other people are suffering the same thing. It's not natural. It's not usual. You need to deal with it, right? Because see, let me tell you, one of the best things you will do for your spouse or your children is to deal with family bondage before you get married. Deal with it before you bring it into that home, because when you bring it into your new home, your spouse might not find it easy. When the person notices that this thing is running in your family and you didn't deal with it, and you got married to him or her, the person might not be happy with you. Your children might not be happy with you. Deal with this situation. Let me end by saying this. David fought all his wars and he made sure there is peace in Israel before he made Solomon king. Before he died, he made sure he fought all his wars. He didn't want Solomon to fight wars. He didn't want Solomon to be battling from one country to another the way he did, because King David fought a lot of battles. He didn't want his children to fight battle. There are some of us, we need to fight our battles now. Fight the battle of poverty. Deal with it. Fight that sickness. Fight that misfortune. Fight that untimely death. Fight anything that is a negative pattern running in your family. Go for prayers. Go for fasting. Call a man of God. Call for prayers. Break that bondage. Break that curse. Break that curse so your children will not suffer it. So you don't bring it into your home and your spouse will begin to suffer it. Right? Please, I want to encourage you. If you're a single person, go and deal with your family bondage before you get married. And if you're already married and you notice there is a pattern of negative situations, a cycle of curse running in your family, in your generation, go and deal with it. Talk to your spouse about it. Go and deal with it so you don't transfer it to your children and to your next generation. It's very important. Some things are not natural. You notice that people get sick and they die young. People die in accidents. People get divorced in marriage easily. In your family, there's a cycle of divorce. There's a cycle of marital crisis. There's a cycle of misfortune. It could be anything. Please deal with that thing before you get married. And if you're already married, please, and you notice that there's something going on in your father's house that you didn't deal with, tell your spouse. You guys should go and deal with it. Go and deal with it so that your children and your children's children will not suffer it. Some of you are listening to me. There is something that is happening right now and you are ignoring it. You say, well, it happens. It's a sickness that comes once every year at a particular time. My mother suffered it. My grandmother suffered it. Now I'm suffering it. You see, it runs in our family. Some of you, anger is a curse in your family. You use anger to destroy things in your marriage. You say, well, anger runs in my family. My father used to beat my mother, so my husband beats me, and I know my son will beat the wife. Imagine what you are talking about. So you are going to transfer a weakness from one generation to another. Abuse is a curse. It's a curse. Go and watch any man that beat the wife. Check history. His father was beating the mother. His father was beating the mother. Please, if you notice any negative pattern running in your family, whether it's poverty or sickness or untimely death, whatever it is, go and deal with it. Break that curse and don't bring it into your marriage so that your children will start suffering it for. Some children are suffering for what they don't know about, except a prophet tells them, except a man of God tells them, by prophecy, by word of knowledge, that something happened in the olden days. Your father, your mother did this or that, and now you are suffering for it. Please go and deal with it. It's very, very important. And let me end by saying this. Sorry, I'm ending a second time. When you are going about hurting people, when you are being wicked to people, you are sowing a seed. And some of the things that we do today, our children will repeat, right? There are things you do to people and they will place a curse on you. And that curse may not come to you. It may come to your children. It may come to your children's children. In your lifetime, you may feel like, oh, there is nothing wrong, I'm prosperous, but you hurt somebody. You broke someone's heart. You did something that made someone release a curse over you. It might not hit you. It might hit your children. Be careful the way you treat people. And if you notice any cycle already happening in your family, negative cycle, go and deal with it. Except you want your children to suffer it. And sometimes they may not even know what they are suffering. Probably they won't know. See, as a minister of the gospel, I've had so many, people have called me to tell me some things. And while they are talking, I normally ask them, does this happen in your family? Did your father suffer it? Did your grandfather suffer it? Most of the time they tell me, yes, it runs in the family. Go and deal with that situation so your children will not suffer it tomorrow. God bless you.